Good afternoon, ladies. We are studying today Parashat Vayechi, the last Parashat in the book of Bereshit. Our Parashat begins with Yaakov Abinu calling his son Yosef. Vayikra libdo le Yosef. He called his son Yosef. Vayomer lo, Imna masati chen be'anecha. He says, if I have found favor in your eyes, simna yadecha tahat yerechi, place your hand under my thigh in an oath. Ve'asita imadi chesed ve'emet al na tikbereni b'Misraim. He makes his son swear to him that he will not bury him in Egypt, but that he will take his body out of Misraim and bring him to final resting place in the Me'arat HaMachpelah in Hebron, in Eretz Yisrael, where Avraham was buried, and Yitzhak was buried, and the Imahot were buried. The Ramban and some other commentaries question why Yaakov Abinu has to go to such an extent to make his son swear to him. In the olden days, they used to swear by the fellow would take his hand and put it under the thigh of the person, because the thigh is next to the Brit Milah, and the Brit Milah was Kodesh. The Brit Milah is considered it's a sanctified object, and therefore it's like today we would put our hand on a Humash. So in the olden days they would find a holy vessel, especially Yaakov Abinu, who was his whole entity was Kodesh. So the custom was when they would make a vow, they would put the hand next to the thigh, or by the thigh which is next to the Milah, in a place which was Kodesh, in order to make a shivua. So the Ramban asks, why make a shivua at all? Why make a vow or swear at all? He doesn't trust Yosef? I mean, this is something that's a last will and testament. Every last will and testament of a parent is usually fulfilled by the children. I mean, especially he's asking something so important that he should be buried in Israel. He has to make him swear that he's going to do it. So there are different interpretations why he made him swear. The Ramban has a theory that Yaakov understood that Yosef might not be in full control to do what he wants to do. After all, he works for Paro. He has government duties. And therefore the circumstances might make it impossible for Yosef either to leave the country or to take a leave of absence for however long it takes. So Yaakov, knowing Yosef's specific circumstance, said, listen, this is too important for this not to happen. Therefore, you have to swear to me that you're going to do it. It's almost, he was making him swear on the impossible, which is a strange thing. Meaning, if Yosef cannot leave Egypt because he's the king or the viceroy to the king, so what is the swear going to do anything? Swear to me that you're going to do the impossible? What does that mean? So there's a saying that in America they say that the impossible can be done, it just needs more effort and time. Which means we believe anything can be done. Of course, there's certain things that are just totally impossible, that are above nature. We're not talking about that. We're talking about things that seem to be impossible. But the Torah tells us nothing truly is impossible if you put your mind to it and your effort to it and you put the proper exertion to it. Even something that seems impossible can be overcome. So that's what Yaakov was trying to tell Yosef. Listen, you might be faced with a great challenge to bury me. Paro might protest. The government might let you leave. But swear to me that you're going to overcome this. Swear to me that you're going to do everything in your capability and ability and influence to get out of that dilemma and take my body to Eretz Yisrael. Our great Hachamim, they never trusted themselves or other people when it came to the performance of mitzvot. They always knew the weakness of human beings, that at the time when they have a chance to do a mitzvah, so sometimes the Yetzer Hara gives them rationalizations why they don't have to do the mitzvah, and gives them excuses why they don't have to do it. So they would make vows to themselves and personal convictions to themselves, so they don't give in or yield to the Yetzer Hara. Do you remember when Avraham Abinu was told by the king of Sodom, I want to give you a lot of money? Avraham didn't want to take any of the money of the king of Sodom. He felt it would have been a terrible Hilul Hashem that Avraham should become rich on the money of the king of Sodom, who was a Rasha. So it says Avraham raised his hands to God, and Avraham made a swear. And Avraham said, I swear to God, I will not take a penny from the king of Sodom. The rabbi said, what does he have to swear? Just don't take. What do you have to make a swear? Because he knew the nature of the Yetzer Hara. If he didn't swear to himself, the Yetzer Hara would tell him, take the money, you'll give it to tzedakah, it's okay. It's not like you stole it, he's offering it to you. So in order to end the debate with the Yetzer Hara on a dime, so he swears to himself, I swear I'm not taking the money. So therefore he shouldn't become baited. From here we learn another lesson, that the impossible can be done with great effort and exertion. Many people give an excuse and say the mitzvot are too difficult for me. This test is too hard, whether it's Lashon Hara, or whether it's to dress modestly, or whether it's to do any of the 613 mitzvot, whether the positive commandments or negative commandments. We hear from many people the excuse, it's beyond my ability. This is too difficult. I want to teach you a rule that the Hachamim bring down. God, who created us, knows exactly what's in our capabilities and what's not in our capabilities. And He would not command us anything that's beyond our capability. So you have to know the 613 mitzvot are equal opportunity. Nobody should say, this one is impossible for me to do. If it was impossible, God would not hold you responsible and obligated to do it. I'm not saying that the mitzvot are easy. Some mitzvot require a tremendous amount of effort and a tremendous amount of self-restraint. But Borei Olam knows the extent of one's capabilities. And therefore one should never say the performance of mitzvot are impossible. Yosef was being told by his father, what you're going to have to do to me, to bury me in Israel, might be nearly impossible. But swear to me that you're going to make the effort to the nth degree, and you'll accomplish it. And sure enough, Yaakov was right on the money. That's exactly what happened. It says Yaakov died, Paro told him, you can't go. And now he said, but what do you mean? My father made me swear. My father told... And it was because of that Paro said, well, I don't want you to be in contempt of your father. If you gave him the word, fine, you can go bury your father. But there's an interesting midrash that even expands on this conversation that Yaakov had with Paro. Paro tells Yosef, so you made a swear to your father? Go make Hataran Nedarim. There's a law that says you can go in front of 3 rabbis and say, I made a swear, I want to absolve myself from the swear. It seems Paro knew our laws. So Paro tells him, go, mutarim lachem, mutarim lachem, mutarim lachem, and there's no more vows, no more swears. So Yosef tells Paro, oh, you want me to make Hataran Nedarim? While I'm there making Hataran Nedarim on this vow, I'm going to make Hataran Nedarim on another vow. What's the other vow? When Paro, very good, the language. When Paro called Yosef out of prison to interpret his dreams. So it says Yosef came out of prison, and it says Paro sat on a throne, a tall throne with 70 steps. And it says that Paro spoke 70 languages. And Yosef was at the bottom step, and Paro started to converse to him in one language, and Yosef was fluent, and he answered him. So he was able to rise one step. Paro started to talk to him in a different language. Yosef responded. He was able to rise another step. Until Yosef reached the 70th step. Now there's no more languages. Now Yosef tells Paro, Mashlomcha. He tells him in Hebrew. Paro didn't know Hebrew. Paro doesn't know Lashon HaKodesh. As a matter of fact, the Hachamim tell us that Yosef learned those 70 languages in one night. The night before, the angel Gabriel came to the prison and taught Yosef 70 languages. You know, it takes us a lifetime to know a language. And he became fluent in 70 Lashonot, and it was a gift from God. It was an angel that taught him. Now already, Paro showed his fluency even greater than Paro. And the tradition in Egypt was the man who knows the most languages becomes king. So Yosef, now already according to the rules, should have become the king. Hi, Grandma, how are you?
Okay.
So it says that according to the tradition, Yosef should have been king. So Paro says, please swear to me. Swear to me that you're not going to tell anybody. Because you'll ruin me. So Yosef says, fine, I swear to you I won't tell anybody. So now it came back to bite Paro. Paro tells Yosef, don't listen to your father's swear. Go make Hatarat Nedarim. So Yosef says, when I go make Hatarat Nedarim for my father's swear, I'll also tell the rabbis to make Hatarat Nedarim on the swear that I made to you. And then you'll be in trouble. So Paro says, okay, touche, go bury your father. I don't want to get involved with you. He says, you're right. I heard once from the Steipler rabbi, he asked a very strong question. Yosef is talking like that to a king? That's audacious. How dare him talk to a king like that? He's playing blackmail with Paro? What? If you make me make Hatarah on that, then I'm going to make Hatarah on the other vow. Paro should say, who you're talking to? You're talking to the king of Egypt. You're not talking to your friend over here. How does Yosef even have the chutzpah, we should say, to start making ultimatums with the king of Egypt? So the great Gaon the Steipler explains like this. He wasn't giving him an ultimatum. He was explaining to him human nature. Human nature is that if a person makes a statement, let's say, or makes a vow, now he's bound by that. He has to keep his word. But if he makes Hatarat Nedarim, that allows him now to, he's absolved. He doesn't have to follow his word. What ends up happening is, by making Hatarat Nedarim, it weakens his sense of keeping his word. If you know you can't break your word, and Hatarah is not an option, and your word is a word, and it must be kept under all circumstances, so that'll keep you from breaking your word and being honest. But once already you make Hatarat Nedarim once, that already says, you can say it, but you can undo it. The whole concept of keeping your word becomes diluted, it becomes compromised. So when he was telling Paro, he says, listen, I'll go make Hatarat Nedarim on my father's vow, but it's not in your advantage that I do that. Because once already you're diluting my words, I might come to, on my own, just to break the vow without even making Hatarah, because the whole thing becomes cheap in my eyes. It's in your interest for me to keep all vows. You should not want me to absolve from any vows in order to keep the concept of keeping a word very high in high esteem. So I don't come to unwittingly divulge the information that you told me not to in a vow. So therefore he wasn't blackmailing him. He was saying, it's in your best interest that I never make any Hatarat Nedarim. So my word will be holy to me. My word will be very important to me. So I won't even think, even unwittingly, to compromise a promise that I made to you. In any event, we see over here in the Torah, it says, after Yosef swears to him, it says, Vayishtachu Yisrael al Rosh HaMitah. It says, Yaakov actually bows down to Yosef and gratitude that he's going to fulfill his words. So it says, Vayishtachu Yisrael al Rosh HaMitah, he bows to him. Hachamim point out on this word, Hamitah, the bed, the numerical value of Hamitah is 59. Hamitah, if you count the letters up, it equals 59. From here the rabbis learn an interesting principle. When one visits the sick, Gemara says it takes away 1/60th of the ailment. That's why the mitzvah Bikur Halim is so great. Besides the fact that you're cheering him up and you're helping him and doing, but you actually give him 1/60th of refuah shelema. Now, I should point out, it doesn't mean anybody that goes visits. The Gemara says it has to be somebody that's born under the same mazal. The Gemara calls that ben gilo. So we really don't know exactly who's born under the same zodiac, under the same star, but it has to be somebody that's, like the neshamot are connected. Now, since we don't know, if we're connected or not, you have to go, because maybe you are the one that's connected. It has to be that way. Otherwise, ladies, we'll just go to every sick person. We'll bring 60 people with us and finish. The guy will jump out of bed or go back to work the next day. So it's only specific people that this thing of 160. It seems that Yosef and Yaakov had that connection. The Neshamot were connected. As a matter of fact, the Gemara says they looked like each other. Yaakov and Yosef were spinning images of each other. So the Pasuk says that Yaakov over here was old. He was sick. He wasn't feeling well. He calls his son Yosef to discuss the burial. Then it says Yaakov gets up. Now already it says Yaakov sits up on the mitah. Hamitah equals 59 to tell us that 1/60th was taken away. Now already Yaakov Abinu started to feel better once Yosef already was there. Hence the word Hamitah hints to us that Yaakov 1/60th of his ailment, so to speak, was taken away. I want to point out also, the Pasuk writes that they tell Yosef, Hine avicha choleh. They told him that he's sick. The rabbis learned from here that Yaakov Abinu was the first one to ever get sick in the world. Before him, there was no such thing as sickness. This is a very hard Gemara to understand. And maybe some of you are thinking of this question also. Was Yaakov the first one to ever be sick in the world? We know that Avraham Abinu, after the circumcision, was sick. On the third day, as a matter of fact, it says God came to visit Avraham to fulfill the mitzvah of Bikur Olim. So how could you tell me Yaakov was the first one to be sick? We see Avraham Abinu was sick. He had an ailment. Furthermore, the Gemara tells us in a different place that Avraham used to wear a precious stone around his neck. And anybody that was sick, he used to go to him and visit him and show him the stone. They would look at it and they would get better. So it seems there were sick people in the world before Yaakov Abinu. So what does the Gemara say? Yaakov was the first one. So Tosafot answers two answers. One answer of the Tosafot is that Yaakov was the first person to become sick naturally. Abraham's sickness was self-inflicted because he circumcised himself. So that type of sickness, that happened always. If a person did an operation or a certain procedure on themselves, of course they got sick. But without any procedure, just naturally walking healthy to get sick, Yaakov was the first one. The second answer of the Tosafot is that in the olden days before Yaakov, there was no sickness that would lead Has v'Shalom to death. There was no threatening diseases. Person got sick, no one died from sickness. The olden days, if a person got sick, he would ultimately get better. In the olden days, the way they would die, it was a sudden death almost. It was a person would sneeze and finish. They would sneeze and they would die. That's why we have a custom when somebody sneezes, we say Gesundheit or God bless you or Chaim Tovim. Because in the olden days, sneezing was a sign of death. In any event, Yaakov was the first person, says the Tosafot, to die from death. That's what it means. He was the first one to get sick. He was the first one to ultimately pass on from his sickness. Now, if we go further in our Parashat, we read how Yaakov Abinu is telling his son Yosef a little of the history how Rachel Imenu was buried. It's interesting why he should do that. Hakamim tell us because Yaakov was concerned that Yosef had some claims in his heart against Yaakov. What were these claims? He says like this. Yosef didn't say this, but this is what Yaakov is anticipating that's in the mind of Yosef. Daddy, you're telling me to go out of my way, to move your body from Egypt to Hebron. How come when my mother died, you buried her on the road? You couldn't take her and bury her dignified in Ma'arat HaMachpelah somewhere? So when it comes to your burial, I should go toil and carry you and do all these things over. And my mother, you gave her a roadside funeral? So Yaakov Avinu has to take those ideas out of Yosef's brain, and he says, listen, ואני בבואי מפדן מתה עלי רחל בארץ כנען. ואקבריה שם בדרך אפרתי בית לחם. I buried her there, and he's telling Yosef, you have to trust me. I buried her there because of a reason. There was a logic why I did it. What was the reason? Yaakov Avinu saw that after Nebuchadnezzar, the tyrant, the king of Babel, destroyed the first temple, he exiled thousands of Jews outside of Israel. And as they were walking into the exile, they walked past the grave of Rachel. And they were downtrodden, and they were broken-spirited. And Rachel Imenu, the mother Rachel, saw the children, her children, going into exile, and she started to cry. And she started to cry incessantly. And she told Borei Olam, please God, redeem my people. Send them the Redeemer, send them the Mashiach. And the tradition is told that God will answer the prayers of the mother Rachel more than any other of the Imahot and the Avot. Why? Because it says Abraham also went to God. Yitzhak went to God. Rachel, Leah, Rivka. And God said, how can I forgive these people? The Jewish people brought an idol and they put it in the temple. There was a king called Menashe. He was Jewish, but he was bad. He went and took an idol and put it in the temple. God said, I should forgive them? They brought an idol in my temple. How can I forgive them? Rachel Imenu goes to God and says, God, putting an idol in the temple is tantamount of a husband bringing another wife into a house. That's unforgivable. But I forgave it. I was the beloved one to Yaakov. He was supposed to marry me after 7 years. And Leah was under the chuppah. And I went and gave over to Leah the signs. I willingly brought another wife into my husband's house, and I forgave my husband. I did not have envy. I did not have jealousy. God, I'm a human being. I'm a mortal, and I forwent my envy. Bringing an idol into your house, you have to forgive them. When Borei Olam heard this claim from Rachel that only Rachel could give, this is a claim that only Rachel was able to say. So it says Borei Olam had no choice but to say, Veshavu banim nigbulam. God tells the mother Rachel, stop crying. I'm going to redeem Klal Yisrael, and Mashiach will ultimately come. So you see, that roadside burial was actually something that was not a disgrace to Rachel. It was actually the greatest honor to Rachel. It was the greatest privilege that Yaakov was putting her in position to redeem millions of Jews. She was put in a position to be the one to take the Jewish people out of their misery because of those tears that she made. It's interesting, Rav Chaim Shmulevitz Alav Shalom used to visit Kever Rachel. Today Kever Rachel became a compound. Used to be, when we used to visit it, it's really, when it says on the road, it's on the road. You were able to pull right up to Kever Rachel, and you're 10 feet from the car door, you're able to run into, to make a beracha by Kever Rachel. Today it's like, it's in the battery tunnel. It's a big cave and underground, and you have to walk because of the security. In any event, Rav Chaim used to go to the grave of Rachel and used to say in Yiddish, but I'll say what he said in English. He would say, even though God told you, Mother Rachel, to stop crying, but I'm telling you, Mother Rachel, keep on crying, because Klal Yisrael's in danger, the Jewish people have tragedies, the Jewish people are still suffering. Don't stop crying, keep crying until the Mashiach comes. Don't let up your tears. From here, ladies, you see a tremendous insight in how great Yaakov Avinu was. Yaakov Avinu did something to Rachel that had ramifications 1,000 years down the road. When we say that Hachamim have insight, when we say that the Hachamim are able to see the future, that Hachamim are able to do things in one generation that'll have great consequences in another generation. Here's exactly an example. Nobody, even Rachel, I'm sure, questioned in our mind. Meaning, after she died, she would have had questions. Why would he bury me on the road? Why couldn't he bury me where I deserve to be? But I'm sure after Rachel went to Shamayim, after 120, when she went up after that, not 120, she died a young lady. They explained to her, Yaakov didn't do you wrong. On the contrary, Yaakov gave you your last respect in the most dignified manner. And that's a lesson that we must learn, that Yosef questioned his father. Dad, what did you do? Unfortunately, the youth sometimes thinks that they know better than their parents, than their elders. There's a Gemara that says, Binyan, the Gemara says, Stirat zekenim binyan. That sometimes when the elders destroy, the destruction of elders is actually positive. Sometimes when you see the elders do things that don't make sense, be patient. Because the destruction of elders is actually construction. They know what they're doing. When you see, well, look what he did wrong, he buried Rachel on the roadside, what a terrible... If he did something that looks negative to you, be patient. Eventually you'll see that it's good. There was one rabbi that passed away very young, and they visited the family. So one of the rabbis who was consoling the family said, on this I can say what the Gemara says, Stirat zekenim, when God takes away the hakamim, when God destructs, when God destroys the zekenim, binyan, it's constructive. Don't ask me how, but even the passing of tzaddikim somehow is constructive. Stirat zekenim, when zekenim leave the world, when elders or when hakamim die, binyan, it's good. How is it good? Time will tell. The future will see how. In this case, you see the insight of Yaakov Abinu, how sharp he was and how crystal he was, in able to see the future. And therefore he tells Yosef, don't have claims against me. On the contrary, if I'm asking to be buried in the Ma'arat HaMachpelah, don't hold it against me because I didn't bury your mother there. Your mother was buried exactly where she was supposed to, and it was kindness. I was doing her justice. The Torah continues, and the Torah tells us, Yaakov Abinu calls his grandchildren, Menashe and Ephraim, and he gives them a blessing. And he says, Becha yevarech Yisrael, Yesimecha Elohim ke'Ephraim v'chem Menashe. Says, my dear grandchildren, when a father is going to come to bless his children, they're going to use you as the example. A father is going to come to his child on Friday night and is going to put his hand on his head and say, may you become like Ephraim and Menashe. Until today, parents bless their children that they should grow up to be like Menashe and Ephraim. We bless our daughters as well, that they should grow up to be like Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, and Leah. But our sons, we give them the blessing, Ephraim and Menashe. Why? Why did they become the paradigm for the blessing? Why not Reuven and Shimon? Why not Yisachar and Zevulun? We have 12 tribes, they're all brothers. Why did Ephraim and Menashe become the paradigm in the blessing? Hakamim tell us that... Oh, that's a good answer also. There's actually two answers. I wasn't thinking of that answer, but it's a very good answer. I'm going to say I answer also. It's very good. Why don't you come sit here? No, don't be sorry. You're saying good. The people who don't say good have to be sorry. You're saying good. One answer might be the following. Throughout history, we saw acrimony between brothers. Anytime you see brothers, up until this point, in Sefer Bereshit, there was always fights. Cain and Hevel, two brothers. Oh, what a fight they had. Cain ended up killing Hevel. And then we go 10 generations later, we have Yitzhak and Yishmael. Yitzhak and Yishmael. Yishmael tries to kill Yitzhak. Sarah has to throw him out of the house. And then we go to the next generation where we have Yaakov Abinu and Esav. And that was a great acrimonious relationship where Esav tried to kill Yaakov. And then in the next generation we see the story of Yosef and the brothers, where the brothers tried to kill Yosef. Throughout our history you always saw brothers that didn't know how to get along with each other. And there was always a claim, Cain was jealous of Hevel, Yishmael was jealous of the blessings of Yitzchak, Esau was jealous of the blessings of Yaakov, the brothers were jealous of the blessings that Yosef had, or the favoritism. And now Yaakov sees his grandchildren, and he decides for whatever reason to give the primary blessing to the younger grandchild. Ephraim receives the primary blessing, and Menashe, the elder, receives the secondary blessing. And Yaakov notices that there was not a trace of envy or animosity or resentment in Menashe. Menashe understood, if my grandfather decided to give my younger brother the primary blessing, I accept it wholeheartedly. And they coexisted and they had no claims against each other. When Yaakov saw finally two brothers that did not get equal share in life, that are able to have peace, this is going to be the blessing that we give our children. Because in life, even in families, it's never exactly equal. As much as we try to make things balanced with our children, it's impossible to make it exactly equal. Someone's going to have a little more, someone's going to have a little less. As much as we try to make it fair, somebody's going to have a house on a more popular block, somebody's going to have get married earlier than the other. There's always going to be things that are beyond our control that they're going to put children against each other. Why does he have? Why does he have? What? And therefore we bless our children at the young age. Whatever happens in your life, whatever successes you may come upon, and even if one has a little more, one has a little less, you should have the attitude of Ephraim and Menashe. You should grow up to have that brotherly love, that even though there was, Menashe could have had a claim. He could have said, hey, listen, it's not fair. And he could have done with Cain did to Hevel, and etc., but he didn't. He accepted it. What a blessing to give our children, that we're blessing them at a young age. Be peaceful. Accept your lot. Don't compare what your brother has. Don't look at what they have. Whatever you have, accept it. It's from God, and you'll be happy. There's another explanation we may say. Ephraim and Menashe, if you could believe this, they have a status of tribes. Which means when we talk about the 12 tribes, Ephraim and Menashe are considered part of the tribes of Israel. When we say Yosef, Yosef means Yosef, and it's Ephraim and Menashe. Now, not everybody can qualify to be a tribe of Israel. You have to be a superhuman being to be one of the Shevatim. The Shevatim were Kolam Kedoshim, Kolam Tehorim, they were pure, they were holy. But what I say it's amazing about this is Ephraim and Menashe were the only tzaddikim that were born in Egypt. The other 12 tribes at least were born in Yaakov Abinu's house. They were raised in a religious community. They were raised in the ghetto. They lived with Yaakov. Yaakov taught them. They had Friday night with their grandfather, with their father. They lived in an insulated community. And therefore, it's really no shock that they became great, because put most people in the environment of Yaakov and his family, and you're going to become great yourselves. Especially if you're 24 hours a day with such concentration. The miracle was, first, that Yosef became great in Egypt. But even Yosef, you could say, well, Yosef had 17 years at home. He did have a strong foundation before he went down to Egypt. Even though it's a great thing that Yosef was able to maintain his religiosity in Egypt for so many years. But you know what? He had 17 years of his father. But Menashe and Ephraim, nothing. They were born in Egypt from the inception. So for them to become great Jews in exile, that's a tremendous accomplishment. That they were unplugged from the house of Yaakov. They did it on their own, which means, of course, Yosef brought them up, but they didn't have that advantage of foundation to see what Yosef saw in Yaakov's house. They had to become great in a foreign land. And that's what we tell our children as well. Especially us Jews that live in America, that live in the exile. In the exile that we live in today, although it's more popular today to be observant maybe, and to follow the mitzvot, and to be more traditional, however, we cannot deny the other side, the magnetism that pulls us, especially in this country, towards liberalism and towards freedom and towards perversion and decadence, etc. It's all over the place. And therefore, we bless our children. Yesimecha Elohim ki Ephraim v'Manasseh. That you should grow up to be like Ephraim and Manasseh, even though you're in the exile, even though you're exposed to all the prevailing society, even though we're surrounded by all the tum'ah of all the contamination, whether it's on the televisions or whether it's on the internet or whether it's in the newspapers or magazines, as we said, or whether it's in the movie theaters, or now even if it's on the cell phones. There's all sorts of mediums where our children, Chas v'Shalom, can become corrupted, and therefore we bless them at a young age. You should become great in the exile. You should grow up to be like Ephraim and Manasseh. To bless them that they should be like Reuven and Shimon, it's apples and oranges. It's not comparable. Reuven and Shimon lived in the house of Yaakov. We want to bless our children that they should become great, even though they didn't have the advantage to be, let's say, in a holy country. We want them to become tzaddikim even where we are today. Towards the end of our Parashat, Yaakov Abinu, it says, was about to bless his children, and it says he was actually about to tell them when Mashiach was coming. It seems he had the date in his brain. And as he was about to give them the date of Mashiach, it says he went blank. Actually, it says the divine inspiration left him. Shekhinah left him, and he wasn't able to tell them the specific date. Would have been a great thing to know, but he lost the Shekhinah, he lost Ruach HaKodesh. So I saw from one of the rabbis, he lost Ruach HaKodesh. Why did he have to lose Ruach HaKodesh? Why couldn't God just conceal it from him? Even somebody that has Ruach HaKodesh, divine inspiration, doesn't mean that he sees everything. He sees what God lets him see. So God could have just concealed the date in his brain, but why did he have to take away the whole divine inspiration from him? So I saw a very interesting theory here. We have a rule, and we mentioned it last Shabbat. For a person to be divinely inspired with Ruach HaKodesh, he must be happy. He must be in a good mood. He must have a good spirit. If a person is depressed or sad, Shekhinah cannot rest upon him. So maybe this is what happened. Yaakov Abinu, in his mind, he had Ruach HaKodesh. And he saw Mashiach. He saw the date. But you know what else he saw? He saw what the world is going to be like at the end of times. He saw what the Jewish people are going to have to go through. And what he probably saw more specifically is, he probably saw the Holocaust. He probably saw that the precursor to Mashiach, how much suffering the Jewish people are going to have to go through. That the price for Mashiach to come is going to be 6 million Jews, 1 million of them children. And that's only one of the Holocausts that Yaakov Abinu saw. He saw all the pogroms and all the inquisitions and all the bludgeoning and the butchering of Jewish people throughout the generations. And he knew that this is part of the process. That the birth pains, as the Gemara calls it, the birth pains of Mashiach. Because when a lady gives birth, it's in most cases difficult. Birth pains, but eventually it leads to something, to a happy situation. And that's the same thing with Mashiach. For the process to take place, it's painful. And Yaakov Abinu, when he was about to tell them this date, he started to see what was going to happen, and he himself got depressed. And he himself got down. So Shekhinah had to leave him. Shekhinah left him because He wasn't happy anymore because he saw exactly what was going to happen. Our rabbis learned a lesson from over here. Our rabbis, again, first of all, show the greatness of Yaakov Abinu, that he's able to see things 3,000 years ahead. He's able to see things that happen in our time already. He was living it then. But we see also that when a person lets himself get depressed and get down, then already the divine inspiration leaves him. None of us have Ruach HaKodesh, including the speaker. But we're all divinely inspired. We're all motivated. One of the things that ruins our inspiration to get closer to God is depression. When a person is sad, when a person is upset, when a person is not able to cope with all the different things that take place in life, that already can cause a person to lose his religion. In Yaakov's case, his depression caused him to lose his Ruach HaKodesh. But in our situation, we cannot let ourselves become crushed by the adversities of life. And that's why our nation is called Am Keshe'oref. We're a stiff-necked people. Jewish people by nature are stubborn. We understand this. The stubbornness manifests itself in different ways. But is this a compliment or is this a criticism? Our rabbis say that stubborn nation is actually a compliment. But it has some bad side effects, but it's really a compliment. They say it's like medicine. Medicine generally is good, but some medicine has side effects. One of the bad side effects of a stiff-necked nation is when Moshe Rabbeinu didn't show up. After one day he was late, at least in their mind, he was one day late from coming down from the mountain. This stiff-necked nation went and constructed an egel, a golden calf, even though Aharon said don't do it. But they were stiff-necked. They didn't want to listen to anybody. They had their mind made up. We're doing the egel, we're doing it. So that's one of the bad effects of being stiff-necked. But our stubbornness also is good, because we wouldn't be here today if we weren't stubborn. If you read our history, how sad it is, and how bloody it is, and how catastrophic Jewish history is, how many things have befallen our people that haven't befallen any other nation. And what gives the Jew the ability to keep on ticking, to keep on moving, to keep on striving, to keep on growing, to keep on advancing? If you look at history, it can be so debilitating. It's like, what happened to us? Somebody might say it's not worth it. Let's throw in the towel. What are we involved? What are we getting involved in Judaism? Look at all the tzaddikim that died. Look at all the good people that perished. What are we involved with? If we weren't stubborn, we'd give up. But our stubbornness gives us that conviction that no matter what happens, we're clinging on to God. We're not leaving you, God. You're not going to shake us off that fast. We're not so easy to get rid of. Even though our history should be a reason for us to abandon our faith. But on the contrary, we're a stiff-necked people, we're a stubborn nation, we're obstinate. We're Am Keshe'oref. And that's exactly what the rabbis are learning over here. That we cannot let our personal situations also crush us. Everybody has adversity in life. Everybody has difficulty. Everybody goes through crisis from one time to another. Everybody experiences, Chas v'Shalom, death in a family. But the Torah is coming to tell you, you cannot let those personal incidents bring you down, because that'll affect already your religious observance. Religion cannot be performed where there's sadness. Ivdu et Hashem b'simcha. King David says religion must be performed optimally b'simcha. It has to be with happiness. Where there's sadness, where there's depression, where there's bitterness, there is no room for God to enter. If Yaakov lost his divine inspiration because he saw the Holocaust, he saw the Inquisition, that already lowered his status. All the more so us, how careful we have to be to find ways to maintain our happiness. I'd just like to make one more hidush, and then I'll conclude. I'll let you go. One word about the blessings. Yaakov blesses his 12 sons. I want to point out that if you'll read these blessings, you'll find that they're not the normal blessings that we're used to. The normal blessings that we're used to is you should live to 120 years, you should have health, you should have success, you should have beracha, only good things. The blessings of Yaakov were far from blessings like that. As a matter of fact, Reuven is the first one to be blessed, and Yaakov tells Reuven, his first child, you blew it. You could have been great. You had all the qualities, but you made a mistake. And because of this mistake that you made by moving your father's bed without permission, al total, you lost all benefits. You should have been the king. You're not the king. You should have been the Kohen. You're not going to be the Kohen. Everything. Oh, this is a blessing. This is the greatest rebuke. Shimon and Levi are next. Shimon and Levi, you also made terrible mistakes in your life. You went and killed out the whole city of Shechem. Yes, you were protecting your sister Dinah, who was raped, but you had no right to do such a thing. You shouldn't have done it. You acted in anger. It was wrong. You jeopardized the security of our family. I don't want to be mentioned with you. I'm going to scatter you. What type of blessings are these? These are called the berachot. Imagine what the kelalot of Yaakov are. And if you look at all of them, they have the same nature. So I heard the other night from a great rabbi, Rabbi Elbaz, he explained, the greatest blessing that a person can have is when somebody points out his faults. That's a beracha. For somebody to come and just say, you're great and everything's fine, so already there's no room for improvement. One who is truly blessed if he has somebody that comes to him and says, you're making a mistake over here, and this you're not doing proper, and this over here you have to correct yourself, because then there's room for advancement. Yaakov Abinu knew his children were tzaddikim. For him to come and say, oh, you did this, and I love you for this, and you did that, you're great for that, he's just reinforcing something that they know. That's good also from time to time, to reinforce positive traits. But more importantly, Yaakov Abinu is saying, before I go, this is your shortcoming. This is what you have to work on. And maybe that's why God in His infinite wisdom created us with parents. Because parents have that responsibility in order to point out the faults to their children. Of course, they have to do it sensitively and they have to do it in the right time, but it's a job of a parent to rebuke his children and their children to make sure that they can correct themselves. One rabbi said that's also the concept in marriage. It says, God says, I'm going to give man a wife kinegdo, against him. The rabbis say against him. Why would you want it to be against him? It should say a wife for him, with him. So the normal explanation they say is, if he merits, he'll have a wife that's with him. But if he doesn't merit, he'll have a wife that's against him. So it's talking about two situations. The optimum wife, of course, is the wife that's with the husband. But I saw from other rabbis that say differently. That the advantage of marriage is that the wife, or the spouse, I should say, sometimes is against. Because nobody sees their faults. And therefore the advantage of marriage is that a spouse can say, on this you're making a mistake. On this you're not acting correctly. On this maybe you have to change course. And that's the advantage. This is not to motivate you to go criticize your husbands, ladies, tonight, obviously. But maybe you're doing it anyway without this class. But the point is that there's an advantage. The great Gaon of Vilna, who was the great rabbi, he had a problem. He said, I'm the greatest rabbi of the generation. Nobody rebukes me. Nobody criticizes him. Anybody going to go to the Gaon of Vilna and criticize him? So he went and he paid money to a rabbi called Rabbi Yaakov Meduvna, the Magid Meduvna. He paid him money. He said, I want you to come every day and rebuke me. I'm paying you to criticize me. So the story is told, the Magid Meduvna came to the Gaon of Vilna the first day. So what am I going to tell you? What can he tell the Gaon of Vilna? The man was really holy. He was above rebuke. He was above criticism. So the Yaakov Meduvna says, when I go up to Shamayim after 120, he's talking about himself. They're going to ask me, how come you didn't learn this? How come you didn't do that? How come you didn't accomplish this? How come you didn't achieve this? I have a very good answer. I'm going to answer like most people are going to answer this question. What do you want from me? I'm not the Gaon Mevilna. And then he looked at the Gaon and said, but what are you going to answer? You are the Gaon Mevilna. They're going to hold you responsible because of your talents and capability of so much greater things. We have an excuse. We're not you, but you're you. And the Gaon started crying. And here you see what it means, the value of rebuke. And maybe that's why the Gemara says, Has v'shalom, if somebody causes his friend to go blind, it's not as bad as if you cause him to go deaf. Both are terrible, don't get me wrong. But the Gemara is weighing, which is worse? And the rabbis say the reason why if you deafen somebody it's worse, because now he cannot hear rebuke anymore. Now already he's not able to hear criticism. And therefore we have to be open to criticism. Many people become defensive, and right away they have their guard up. David HaMelech was the opposite. David HaMelech said, Bakamim alay mere'im. When my friends come against me with critique, Tishma'na oznai. He says, my ears are wide open. I'm all ears to hear criticism, because that'll make me better. And that's exactly what Yaakov was doing. Besides giving them the standard blessing of a father to a son, he was pointing out their shortcomings. And how lucky were these children, because they had a father that was able to know each one of his children what they were lacking. And he pointed it out to them. And after he died, they were able to work on those shortcomings. And it was the result of Yaakov's blessings that they became perfect. Now they were able to fill in the gaps of their life. Yiratzon, that we should have that same capability when raising our children, that we should know them in order to teach them the proper way.